Okay.
Hello, welcome to the Waterroots Global Storytelling Journal. Today I'm with Noani Esther from Nigeria, who is a mangrove specialist. So thank you so much for being here today. She will be sharing her work with mangrove conservation and the importance of mangroves in water quality. So go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity, Joey. I'm Wani Esther from Nigeria. And last year, I started working with Coastal and Marine Areas Development Initiative, who is into environmental conservation, mangroves most especially. And I've come to understand that mangroves play a really crucial role in our environment, being that they suck up carbon from the atmosphere 10 times than your normal trees. So they are good carbon sinks and helps to mitigate climate change. All right. Maintaining our environment, they protect the coastline from issues such as soil erosion and flooding. But lately, I observed that our lands are being degraded because of urbanization, and I would largely place it on ignorance because a lot of persons do not know the importance of mangroves that they find in their environment. All right, now mangroves are adapted, or they grow in salty water, but they have systems that helps them adapt to that condition. Yeah. So it's good that we conserve the mangroves. And one thing we are looking at, because we have an institution for mangrove ecology, which is the IMIT Tech. Okay, so I'll be sharing details about that maybe sometime soon. But there is an institute we are trying to set up in order to create more awareness through the educational system. Okay, so mangroves should be protected, and climate change affecting our area now. It is, in fact, I was at the mangroves today and I saw that the tides were super high compared to before. And close to the mangrove area, we have fish ponds, about two, one for catfish and tilapia. Now, very soon, if the tide continues to rise, very soon the pond is going to overflow into the main creek and we are going to lose our fishes. Now, why has there been this change? Because I have never seen the tide so high like that before. It is usually at a very low state, or you see it stable. After 6 hours, the tide goes out. After 6 hours, it fills back. But today was just very different from normal. So, and that is as a result of climate change. Now we've been having series of rainfalls, heavy rainfalls this period. And what's the cause? Sometimes pollution. And aside from this mangrove I visited, I also checked out other communities in Warri South here in Delta. And those places are plagued by pollution, oil spill. You see that biodiversities in those areas are lost. And as a result, people will lose their source of livelihood and all of that. So we must make it a thing. Each and every one of us has to take an individual responsibility to keeping our mangroves safe. And from the program, I attended a seminar early this year, which we were advocating for the right of rivers. So that's why the thought came in, why don't we also advocate for the right of mangroves? That when you hurt the mangrove, before you can even do that, you are meant to pass through stringent laws and all of that. There are policies backing the mangrove so that we don't lose them. Because the more the mangroves go, you keep cutting them down, the carbon it has stored over the years is released back into the atmosphere. And you see that, oh, there's going to be much more. The climate change effect is going to worsen than it is now. Thank you very much. So if you have further questions, you could ask.
Thanks so much for sharing. I wanted to hear more when you talked about how the mangroves are threatened because there's a lot of ignorance. Do you think this is an education challenge, or what do you think is the biggest threat to the mangroves today?
Okay, I said largely it is an educational challenge because our children do not know what they are. Sometimes when we have visitors come to the park and you ask them, what are these things? Even for me, I got to learn so much about mangrove just a few years ago. So I never knew what they are growing up as a child. So it's not something that we have in our curriculum. It's not something that our teachers talk about. We just know that I know sometimes I've heard something like wetlands that they mentioned, but I've never seen it. I don't know how it looks like. I don't even know what a mangrove was. So these things, environmental studies need to come into our curriculum so that our children can learn from it. And that's one value we teach at the park. We teach them about mangroves. I think we have some books that talks about mangrove that explains it in a way that children can understand. And we try as much as we can to bring this knowledge to their level, to something they can comprehend. So largely the issue is ignorance. Secondly, I can say that people who have learned about it are refusing to take individual action because sometimes they'll say, oh, this is not located in my area, so it's none of my business. I don't care what happens to it. I don't care if it's taken away. I don't care if it's cut off. I don't care if it's polluted. So we are refusing to take individual action.
Thank you for sharing. Today, I was speaking with our delegates from Haiti, and they also work in the mangrove space. And they were telling me about how in Haiti, a lot of mangroves are being cut and burned to make charcoal because they have low energy there and they need to burn things to have a source of energy. I wanted to ask, is this something you've seen in Nigeria where people are burning down or cutting the mangroves because they need energy? Or is it more that because of urbanization, they need more space to expand their cities?
Okay, we aren't, I think just a few people use mangrove woods for energy purposes, like maybe for cooking and all of that. But largely, you find that destruction of mangroves is as a result of urbanization. So the mangroves are cut down, the lands are sandfilled, and before you know, you hear there's a mangrove here, and give it some few years, here there's a house, somebody's living there. So it's just so crazy. So not largely because of energy purposes, just very few people who live in the rural areas do that. Even those in the rural areas, they that's where their livelihood is because they get to fish. There's something they call periwinkle picking. There's something they pick in the when the tide is low. You come there, people pick it in sack bags, they sell and they make money from it. So it's a very good source of living for those in the rural regions. But definitely as the urban area keep increasing, if care is not taken, the place we currently use as a mangrove conservation center, if the owner wasn't so dedicated to this cause, maybe those lands would have been used for building houses, maybe turned into an event center and all of that. Yeah, so basically that's it. It's more because of urbanization.
Okay, that makes sense. I wanted to ask, knowing this and working with the mangroves for a year, how do you think your relationship with nature or with water has changed? Do you think that since you're engaged or working and educating so many people about nature, you're more connected to it, or you find water more precious? Or I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Okay. I find nature, in fact, being able to share, it means you have a deep connection with it. Something you find easy to share means you are find a way to connect with it so deeply. So now I really appreciate the mangroves. And yes, SDG 6 is also a value for us too. So when the our waterways are protected from pollution, we can also protect the mangroves as well. So it's more or less like, if you do this, this is safe. If you don't do this, so if our waterways are polluted, it affects the mangroves. If the waterways are clean, it's good for the mangroves. So I don't know if I satisfy your question with this answer.
No, you did great. One final question. You talked about it a little bit, but I want to hear more. How has
Okay.
climate change impacted this entire relationship with mangroves? I know that mangroves are used in water purification or in protecting against flooding, so they're very important in environmental resilience. In Nigeria, how do you think climate change has either exacerbated, which means that the mangroves are being cut more, or has helped in increasing the exposure to the necessity of mangroves? That was a very difficult question for you to pick up. So, main question is, how has climate change impacted this relationship in the mangroves?
Okay, I believe I mentioned that earlier. I said tides are really high this period. That's one visible effect I'm seeing right now. The tides are super high. And now, once the tides are high, that way, like I said, most of our ponds might overflow if it continues that way. Two, there's a lady I usually see because I'm going to share instances from what I've seen. Yeah, so that I don't talk from what I already know. So I met with her 2 days ago, and she was complaining that, oh, the tides are high and you don't find lots of fishes in the water. That for some days she has been trying to do this and she hardly catches anything. So now the high tide has led to climate change has caused the high tides, and now the high tides has led to loss of livelihood, or let's say loss of something to eat for this particular lady. So she has lost that opportunity. So it's something that goes way beyond. So if she is a big dealer, let's say she sells fishes and all of that to make a living, you see that affects the economy in a way. So it might not really have a very big impact, but if each fish farmer keeps complaining, oh, the high tide is making me lose, I don't have access to fishes anymore. They come with that complaint. You see that small impacts, it grows larger, and that's something big. So it affects the economy. So that's one way that climate change has impacted the mangroves.
Thanks for sharing. I definitely relate with the small impacts do add up. And I want to add that
Yeah.
as long as it's impacting people, the lady you mentioned might have been fishing there for maybe like 10, 20 years, and recently is noticing that the fish are disappearing. So that's like a very clear sign that human-induced climate change has having an impact. Well, thank you so much for sharing your water story and your work with the mangroves. And thank you for being part of the Waterroots team.
Thank you, Joey.